Hello, Facebook community. Jess Claire here. I'm about to go live with Elizabeth Jameson. We have been working out the technical side of this now for the last hour. So hopefully this is going to work. I'm just waiting for her to come on. Perfect. And I want you to come on. Looks like it's going to work. So just adding you now. I'll wait a few more moments for people to come on. Hello, Kirsty. Hello, Kirsty. Just as Elizabeth's being added.
Hello,
We've done it.
How about that? Only taken out. Let me just see. Let's send that. Hopefully that will work. Yeah.
Do you have earphones playing?
That might be a better idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever we need to do is what we will do.
That's right.
Okay. About that. Right. Is that better?
Oh, perfect. We
How
did
about
it.
that? How about that?
We did
Oh,
it.
man.
I feel so proud now.
I feel something. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. So thank you.
My pleasure.
So thank you for being on this, and absolutely thrilled to have you also coming on the panel for the upcoming Here on Purpose for event for LGBTIQ plus professionals.
That is my pleasure.
So just to get us started, did you want to put your phone somewhere so you don't have to hold it?
Yeah, that's. I think that's. I think that's ambitious, Jess. I think I'm just going to cope. When we got on in
right.
in this setting, this is how I'm sitting. Yeah.
Okay. All right. No problem. There's going to be people come on, and I'm going to say hello to them. So hello, Kirsty. She's watching. Also coming to our event. And there's going to be people that watch this later. So the way I know that people are watching it later, #replay, leave us a comment about, any of your thoughts about this particular topic. But like I said, really thrilled to have you on our panel,
It's
Elizabeth.
my pleasure, Jess.
Elizabeth is a non-executive director at RACQ, also a co-chair at the Pinnacle Foundation, which we'll go into in a bit more. Is that right?
Deputy chair. Yep.
Deputy chair. Fine. Okay. And you're the founder of Board Matters, which is a governance company for corporates. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, great. But what we're discussing today is I heard about you through the grapevine when I heard about some of the awesome things that you've accomplished and some great things that you've stood for in your life. And particularly what I'm interested in is how we encourage and inspire people to be the leader that they want to be for themselves and for the world, and to be that themselves. Live and lead your own life authentically. So that's what we want to talk about today. One of the topics I sort of talked to you about was this label that is in the community we're a part of, the LGBTIQ plus community. Some people I speak to, even, Kezia, who just came on one day, she left me a message and went, that event, I don't know what I am. But that's a great event.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I know, and you work at the Pinnacle Foundation, or you're a deputy chair at the Pinnacle Foundation. Do you want to just tell everyone who is watching what that is, a little bit more about, you know, the kind of things you do there?
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, so Pinnacle Foundation is it's 10 years old this year, and its reason for being is scholarships and mentoring for marginalised LGBTIQ plus young people, youth. We're starting to struggle with the acronym problem ourselves, not just because of the length and clunkiness of the acronym, but because even that is a little bit sort of binary about the world. You know, you're an L or a G or a B or a T or an I, you know, and I think what we're struggling with now is our purpose is marginalised LGBTIQ youth, getting them scholarships and mentoring to get them into tertiary education for a better life, for a better prospect, and fitting people into those little sort of categories is actually presenting a problem, probably with the next generation from mine, if you like, and in fact, in my day, you were an L or a G or a B. You know, there was invisibility of some of those other groups even. So it's a very pertinent topic for us, how you define or don't define people by their gender identity and sexuality. So.
Yeah. And so tell me, if you could give me an example, what is someone you would consider marginalised that you would offer a scholarship to?
So, and maybe just to explain my comment a moment ago a little bit more. So we're talking about, rather than the acronym, which can be seen as too limiting, talking about people who have suffered some hardship as a result of their gender or sexual identity. So in other words, they have grown up in a family where it's caused them extreme hardship, and or they might have been thrown out of home, or they've been subjected to, you know, physical harm or certainly mental harm in the home, the school, you know, because of the family being perhaps part of some particular faith-based group that just, you know, it creates all sorts of problems for them. So they tend to be people who have not reached the point where just based on their history to date, they'll be able to go on into tertiary education. So that,
Yeah, great. Okay. Which actually leads us to the topic here, which is, why does it matter to have the acronym exist? And, you know, what you're pointing to is there's kind of got to be a way that people can associate to something so that you can deal with some of the issues in the community. But I'd like your thoughts. That they were mine. But why doesn't it matter at the same time?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I guess the older I get, the more I think we're social creatures, humans, and we're tribal, and we like to belong to groups and tribes and social systems, and one of the things you said to me in one of our early conversations, Jess, was, you know, when you grow up with all of the conditioning around us about what normal is, you know, heterosexual, nuclear family, a couple of kids, and, you know, and do it the right way, the normal way, and everything you see in film and television and what you read in books gives you this message that there's something abnormal about you. It's just the power of finding a tribe you belong to. And actually, one of the things I really love about identifying with my sexuality is I reckon I have met and related to people across a whole range of social groups in society that I may not have otherwise, that I might have even been scared to associate with, you know, that I didn't belong, and that's a scary part of our society or of humankind, and it's not, you know. So I think it gives you it gives you a sense of belonging, where often you grow up, or for a lot of people grow up feeling abnormal and not belonging, and there's nothing like the power of belonging. So
So essentially, you got to go and have conversations, relationships, interactions with people you wouldn't have had you not had to associate with the community.
Absolutely, And I think from a very young age, when I started to identify with my sexuality, so I was 21, and that's some 30 odd years ago now, so we'll just put it that way. And at that time, I started my first relationship, and I had almost that lightning bolt, this is who I am moment. I really didn't know until then. And when I did, I found myself even moving into social groups that looked kind of, to me, crazy and radical from the outside. And they get inside and find they're just really, they're not. They're just people with different perspectives and views and life experiences and different ways of, I think, people in our family. So we talk about the Pinnacle family, really. So in this community or family, you find people have found a number of different ways to cope with that sense of not belonging, including sometimes trying to look, look not in the physical sense, but trying to carry themselves as frightfully more, scary than they are. And in fact, it's often because of a deep sense of insecurity and need to feel accepted and to belong. It's such a human need.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
You asked though where it doesn't
and
matter.
Look,
sorry, Jess. You asked where it doesn't matter. Should I?
No, you go. Please go.
And, so where it doesn't matter, and where I think the good fight is still there to be fought, is in every other way. In that we can, there's you see it in boardrooms. So my walk of life is boardrooms. I tend to spend a lot of my time in boardrooms, and in recruitment processes, whether it's for board members or executives, I am very aware of I'd like to think it's always unconscious bias. I fear sometimes it's conscious bias. But the biases that come into decisions about people just not fitting that narrow, that sort of deep, narrow idea of the corporate or, the director or the executive. And that's where I think we've got to break down a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah. So that's what you say, why it does matter. Why it does matter is to have, this acronym matters so that people get to explore and discuss and deal with some of those conscious or unconscious biases that just still exist.
And the flip side of it is where it doesn't matter or shouldn't matter is in the decisions that people make in society about, who's suitable to do particular jobs or carry out particular roles. It shouldn't matter that you belong to that particular family any more than it should matter whether you belong to a particular church or you're a gardener or you're a mountain climber or a rock hopper, or none of that should matter. But it matters to know that you belong to, that you're okay. And I think that's where I've most of the time got my sense over the years that I am okay in spite of, family or other views to the contrary. So.
Yeah, great. And how have you navigated through that as a professional?
Well, that's interesting. So so I qualified as a lawyer, and I spent 15 years in what I sort of tend to describe these days as conventional legal practice before I started my own business, Board Matters, about 18 years ago. And when in legal practice as a young lawyer, I simply did it by what so many people, it's changing a little bit, but I don't think it's changed completely. I did what a lot of young professionals then certainly did, and that is just avoid talking about my private life. I just, would speak in the singular about what I did on the weekend as opposed to what we did on the weekend, whereas, other normal people talked about what we did on the weekend and, it just became part of who they were. So I avoided it. I always...
Yeah, I call that... sorry to interrupt you. I call that gender gymnastics.
Yeah.
Where you avoid using gender.
Absolutely.
In order to not have to deal with anything that might come from
exactly.
Yeah.
That's largely what I did. And in my mind, I told myself, and some of this is true, and some of it's probably I could have let go of earlier. But again, that sense of needing to feel a sense of belonging. So I told myself that what it was about was being accepted. As I believed I was a kid who did well at school, and I did well at uni, and I got a good job and I did well in my job. And so it was just, for me, it was telling myself I needed people to judge me based on that, not anything else about me personally. And once I'd established my credibility with them, then I would share a bit more and share a bit more. And then, so I had a group of friends, and it was kind of interesting to me when I do remember at one stage as a young professional, I can't really remember how old, but late 20s probably, and coming out, as it were, an expression that I hope one day is seen as a frightfully 20th century expression, but coming out to one of the older professionals in the firm I worked in, and her just looking at me and going, Lizzie, which is what everyone called, my friends going, Lizzie, everybody knows that. And I, had sort of sailed around thinking I was, nice and safe and keeping this little deep, dark secret. And in fact, that was probably one of the turning points for me of going, oh, really? So, it's more widespread, more widely known than I knew it was. And heaven forbid it hasn't been the end of the world for me. So that was little baby steps of getting braver and braver to the point where it didn't matter so much. But I tell you something, Jess, boardrooms is the last, it took me a long time to feel comfortable in boardrooms. So, when it came to the board and executive Christmas dinner and the invite goes out and you're the brand new director, took me a long time to say, yeah, my partner Abby's coming with me. I have to be honest. That was the scariest.
How many?
How many? It's
How many years? What age were you?
Good question. So I'd say that was probably about 8 or 9 years ago. Yeah. So I've been,
I won't ask you how old.
Well, if you do the maths on what I said earlier about the 21 and 30 years ago, it's about 20 years of. But then I suppose I didn't really, in the early days, my boardroom career kind of started in the arts. One of the other boards that I'm on that we didn't mention up front is Queensland Theatre. I love Queensland Theatre. I'm very proud of that involvement. And because I was always a bit of an arts kid, and and that was an interest area for me. Some of my earliest boards were in the arts, and of course in the arts it was positively mainstream to be gay, so that was not, that actually wasn't as big a deal there. But where probably was the bravest leap of faith for me was my girls' school board, which I greatly loved. So I was chair of the board of Brisbane Girls Grammar School until the beginning of this year, and that was my old school, and I got involved there originally out of a sort of sense of a debt of gratitude for what it had done for me. But over time, it transformed into a passionate belief in there's still a need for girls' education to be, to have a sort of special, or there's still a place for focus on the education of girls and young women. And in that environment, I was more anxious than in some others about my sexuality not undermining or damaging the school, because schools like that can, will have a range of different families in the parent body, and I always was anxious that not be a damaging thing. And far from being a damaging thing, I've had some of my most empowering and satisfying moments, I guess, about being accepted and acceptable. So
well, that was one of the moments that I was told about when you were doing an address at school, and you shared about your partner, and it was in that moment of you sharing like yourself fully and opening that side to you that people got really moved by that.
As you can see, it makes me smile just to think about it.
So
do you want me to tell you a bit about that moment, or is that
go for it? I think people would love it like that. If you can share about what happened.
It was a year ago next month. So I finished up after 12 years as chair of the board of the school, and I had loved my years there. I still, right to the end, I loved it because it was affirming, and to see all the wonderful things that young women in that context, young people in that generation are doing. It was just a wonderful thing to be involved with. And of course I'm completely biased, so it was in particular the young women at that school that I was so proud of, and seeing them do all these amazing things. But at the end of last year, standing down as chair of the board after many years, I had I spoke to the principal about it beforehand, because again I said I don't want to do this as a means of grandstanding. I just genuinely want to thank my partner, like everybody else would do. And so I just sort of told her what I wanted to say, and she was fine with it, of course. And anyway, so speech day is the big event of the year, and I had been invited to give the keynote address. And during the speech, it just so happened that I had noticed that the speech day was 12 months to the day from the marriage equality vote. And so I said right towards the end of my speech, and it was relevant to the topic too, because my key message to the kids was stop with all this, silly ideal of perfection, because in my day it was the Coke ads, in your day it's social media. Everybody's social media profile says my life is perfect, and kids take that very seriously, and they think, everybody else's life is better than theirs. And so I was sort of trying to talk about it's okay to be different. It's, in fact, it's the flaws in us that make up the whole. And so I got towards the end of the speech, and I said, in fact, for me, I grew up doing all the right things and studying hard and getting a job and doing all those things. But there was this thing about me that I pretended wasn't there for a very long time. And afterwards, a few of my my adult friends who were amongst the parent body or staff or what have you, said there was this ripple going. She's going to talk about it. She's going to talk about it. And I said that there was something that for a long time I carried around, and I sort of kept it a little bit under wraps. And I said, but 12 months ago today, I sat on the couch and surprised myself by crying at the yes vote in the marriage equality vote. And that 24 years, I'd been on the board for 24 years and chair for 12. And I said, 12 years ago when I became chair, and certainly 24 years ago when I joined the board, there was no way I could stand up here and thank my partner Abby. And today I not only could, but I did. And there was this extraordinary eruption, and kids were standing up all over the hall, and it was a very emotional moment actually for me and for Abby. And then the next day when I was up at the school, several kids just thanked me and said what a great speech it was, and that was lovely in itself. But there were two or three that made a point of coming up and saying, I just wanted to thank you for that. I'm gay, and that meant a lot to me. And that's why, to your question, that's why it still matters. The LGBTIQ acronym still, or however we end up describing it, it still matters for kids. Like we know in our own sort of walks of life, you find role models across all types, in all types of all parts of your life. And I think for kids that grow up with that sense of self, it's important for them to have role models. So that was a great moment. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and look, that's a good point, because now you're what I consider a role model for the professional community, and or the professional the professional tribe, corporate and professional tribe. And one of the things I've noticed myself, even as a professional, and as I've walked through this, is I've got a community of people that are widespread, not from LGBTIQ community. Actually, very limited amount of my great friends are. But what I've also noticed is at some point I switched from needing it, which I did in my years. I really needed the community. I felt like I didn't know who I was, and I needed the community. And then at some point I got settled. I was able to share it. I was able to be myself. And then I almost didn't want to know about it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, and then it was like, no, now it hinders me. Now I feel like this isn't just who I am. This is just this community I'm a part of. And there were things I really needed it for at some point. But now what I'm noticing, and I did want to talk about this as well, is now I'm limited by it, because now it seems that the stigma is all people know about is this nightlife, or the activism that at some cases can be quite extreme, not always, but sometimes can be. And so I noticed what was I was uncomfortable was the divide that it can sometimes be with humanity.
Yeah.
Like I call it hashtag Team
Yeah.
Human.
No, I agree.
Um,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So yeah, is it what have you? And so I suppose the question I'm asking is, I noticed there became a group of people professionally that didn't want to associate it with. Don't hide themselves.
No.
But didn't feel like there was this place or this voice for speaking about leadership or coming together as a group, which is why I've had this event, right? And being able to be leaders of their own life, but also own that, like not have to kind of avoid it or not want to talk about it or we've moved past it. I don't even know what to do with it. It's kind of like this awkward place.
No, I agree.
It
is, and I think because you're absolutely right. A lot of what you said resonates for me too. About so when Abby and I got married 3.5 years ago, she's American, and so we decided to get married in Honolulu. Halfway between her family. Yeah, it was very cool, I have to say. Halfway between her family on the west coast of the US and here. And we had some 60 odd friends that came from both sides of the ditch to the wedding, and probably 2-3 couples were gay. I mean, seriously, most of our friends, most of our close friends come from all sorts of walks of life, but they're rarely defined by sexuality. And yet it is still important to me. It is still important to me to feel that sense of belonging, and I think but it doesn't define the whole of me, and that's the thing. And that's when you were asking the question earlier, and in trying to answer the question about when does it matter and when doesn't it matter. I think it's often in boardrooms where I feel the most sense of belonging or not belonging is actually usually more to do with other belief systems. I think, I'm an outlier on this issue, and that's okay. That's a good thing in a boardroom. It's terrible if everyone's in the same, believes everything the same. And so it's really relevant there. So that's why, as you say, you don't want it to kind of become an anchor that weighs you down. And yet at the end of the day, my experience has been of life as I think hardworking, well-intentioned, all of the things that hopefully make you a good citizen. I've tried to be all of those things, and my sexuality has been irrelevant to that. But in understanding and accepting the whole of me, it is absolutely a huge part of me. And that's why I just think it's that balance between the two things. Because every now and then someone who's even maybe in your inner circle or your family says something that just kind of turns a little cog in your stomach or something, that you go, wow, you really don't fully accept that this is okay and normal, do you? So I think that's why it's really important to have enough of a professional network. So we tend to be, as you say, in the sort of professions or business or however you want to put it, our experience of this will be completely different to the LGBTIQ plus, or the family, I'm going to call them now for a moment, where our experience tends to be completely different from the family in, say, theatre or the arts. So that's where I think it actually is helpful for us to go, I'm not quite like that, and I'm not quite like that, and I'm not quite like that, but I'm like this. That we are, people who come from a walk of life that takes us into business and boardrooms and management and executive suites and things like that. But also we're a little, our experience growing up has given us some different perspectives because of gender or sexual identity. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, that's the reason I created this event. Was it was to have a place for professionals who could come together over their successes, who could explore how to express that even, expand it even more, can look to people on the panel who have achieved the kind of life that they really wanted, haven't had to disconnect from this side of who you are to accomplish that, but at the same time it doesn't define you. I was talking to someone in a diversity and inclusion role yesterday. I think it was RACQ actually, and I was saying and I was saying to them, you know, what was I saying to them? I basically, what was I saying?
Yeah, about not defining you as, you know, not that this is part of you, but doesn't define the whole of who you are.
Yes, that's right. Yes, that's right. So I was saying to them, that's a part of who I am. I'm also a parent. Yeah. I'm also a daughter. I'm also I'm a part of the community of the Celine Dion fan club.
Who isn't? Anyone that says they're not is lying.
Like really? like really?
Yeah, no, that's a. I think that might actually go with this characteristic we have. You know.
Oh, that's true, actually. Yes, more with men than women, but yes. But I when you break, that's right. I was saying this. When you break me down,
you're a lot of things
into little bits of identity. There's so many things that actually at some point you get connected to everyone. And I think that's why people grapple with it, and it sort of becomes a bit uncomfortable because as you explore, you realize, and as you expand and realize that's just a part of you, whilst that might be something that gives you a whole bunch of trials when you're younger, as you get older, it's becomes almost irrelevant. Yes. But you need to own it. It's still part of your
I think that's beautifully put. I really do. Yep. It's part of the whole picture of you, but it's not. But it is not the whole picture of you. Yeah.
It's not. And why this event is because there's so much in this community that I want to be just as popular. If we're going to have a stigma, I want it to be a stigma of accomplishment.
That's a lovely idea. Yeah, that's a lovely idea.
A stigma of, you know, I've seen some of the people that are coming to this event. We are all over the industries. You know, boardrooms, Olympians, in hospitals, in financial services, in professional services, business owners, and there's all of this awesome work that's been done. I want to bring that to be something that people are aware of, can see. And then so for the younger people that are still going through some of these trials, because it is still around, and this is why it matters, they get to see that there is this group that they could come along and be inspired by.
Yep. No, I think it's fantastic. On that stigma of awesomeness, I can't help relating one of my favourite stories. It was meant to be an offensive comment, but one of my early relationships, her family was absolutely vile to her about her sexuality, and her mother, in trying to dissuade her from this lifestyle, said that, you know, the problem with these people is they're really charming and attractive, and that's how they get you in. I thought, wow, that's a great seemingly offensive remark. I've never been so chuffed in all my life. To think my problem is I was so charming and attractive. It's not something normally people accuse us of, but there you are, the stigma of awesomeness.
That is absolutely not.
So I like that.
I'm going to take that.
I took it.
Because I'm charming and attractive.
I took it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. That is good. So we can own that awesomeness as well. Yes. And where are we? We've been going for a little while. I know that you probably have to get back to your programs, but I want to finish up because this is going to get posted. This live interview is also going to get posted on LinkedIn. And I think I wanted to acknowledge that because this is quite of a brave conversation for the professional world.
Yeah.
Definitely in my experience, I certainly, I was thinking about it last night when I should have been sleeping. And I thought about, you know, why am I doing this? Well, because I want the professional world, not just with this community, but I want the professional world to begin to connect to what's important to people and open up a level of authenticity and vulnerability in an appropriate and professional way that I think would make a real difference to people's experience at work. So is there anything that when I say that, what can you see as the opportunity of this event in that sense?
Look, I guess I see it as, I love the event idea, Jess. I think it's a great, as you say, it's really about sort of connecting a group of people who have a whole series of layers, and in that room on the night, we will have a small number of parts of me will be in common with you, and will be in common with Andrew, and will be in common with various other people, and a whole lot of layers of me will be in common with nobody else in the room. In my case, it's ABBA. ABBA defines a large part of my my style of personality. In fact, I've long said I'm going out in the box to strains of Dancing Queen. But so there's so many things about us that define us, that makes each and every one of us different. And this is one link that connects us together, that in that, or two links, I guess, because you're trying to pull together people that from that professional or business background who happen to also have this common thread of gender or sexual identity. So I think just making the tribe is, building that tribe is what I see as the power of the event. And I look forward to a lot of new connections and friendships being made on the night, to be honest.
Yes, me too. And so just finally, one last question for you. If you had to share with the professional community what the most interesting thing is about you, or the thing you're most proud of, what would that be? That's
a tricky one. The most interesting thing I'm most proud of is I guess is probably through the arts and education work that I do. My boards are my day job. I consult to them and I sit on them. But the things that I've been kind of proudest of, so I don't know if it's two different things, probably, Jess. It's not necessarily the most interesting thing about me, but I'm a governance geek, so that's not interesting. But that it is to me. It's fascinating to me. It's sad, isn't it? But the fact that I've been able to apply that in parts of life, namely in the arts and education, that are fields that I just love, is probably the thing I'm proudest of. That I've actually been able to find a way to make that governance geekness, to apply it to a really good end. So that's probably the thing that I'm proudest of.
Beautiful. Well, thank you,
That's my
Elizabeth.
pleasure.
Again, I really, really appreciate that you came on and had this live with me today, particularly after an hour that we spent.
It's exhausting, isn't it? But we got there. That's the main thing. Yeah. No, thank you, Jess. I really enjoyed the chat.
We did, and I appreciate your time. You too, and I look forward to seeing you on November 7th.
Excellent.
At the event, and I'm just thrilled to have you as a panelist.
I'll be thrilled to be there. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Jess. Bye all.
See you.